So, RWBY. Despite the title of this video, it may come as a surprise to anyone watching that I absolutely love RWBY. With this being my first video ever, I wanted to make that especially clear. This show is everything to me. I've been a fan for about 6 years now, and it's my favorite show, pretty much ever. I've been with it since the end of Volume 4, and I love everything about it, from its ups to its very negative downs. This statement might prompt the question of, why are you making a seemingly negative video on a show you love so much as your very first YouTube video ever? To put it simply, I thought the idea was neat, and it's something that I have a lot of thoughts on. So, let's just get right into it. As mentioned before, RWBY as a series had its ups and downs. Overall, I tend to find that the show is very often on the verge of greatness, but then stumbles a little in the execution. Nowhere else is that more apparent than in the various season finales of the show. Finales are the climax of the season, the payoff to everything built up to in the preceding episodes. They tend to have the best of the season's action sequences and moments, capping off the current volume in spectacular fashion, getting us excited for the next one. In this video series, I want to go over why each of RWBY's finales seems to consistently falter in one way or another. I'm going to go volume by volume and point out what I think are the best aspects of each finale, as well as each one's biggest flaw. Each volume will have its own dedicated video, and in this one, we'll be covering RWBY Volume 1. In the end, I'll probably compile them all into one big video, but for now, this is how it'll be. At the end of each video, I'll also be placing each volume into a tier list, so that by the time we get to Volume 9, we'll have a ranking list of each RWBY finale. Now, before we take a look at Volume 1, I want to quickly define what makes a good RWBY finale in my eyes. Number 1. It has to be climactic. Self-explanatory enough, the finale should feel like a proper, awesome, and exciting climax to the volume. Number 2. It has to feel like a good resolution to the story of the volume. It should wrap up the season's plot points and resolve its character arcs in a satisfying manner. Number 3. It has to have awesome fight scenes. This should also be self-explanatory enough. RWBY is known for its incredible fights, and the finale especially needs to deliver in this department. Number 4. This one might sound like a strange one for anyone unfamiliar with RWBY, but it has to involve the main character, Ruby Rose, significantly. She doesn't always need to get the final fight, but she needs to play an important role and not just get sidelined. With that out of the way, let's move on to RWBY Volume 1. For this season, I consider the finale to consist of Episode 15, The Stray, to Episode 16, Black and White. So, overall, the Volume 1 finale is a bit of a mixed bag when it comes to my criteria for a good finale, but let's start by recapping it. Earlier in Volume 1, Team RWBY is formed, but there is immediate friction between RWBY, the leader, and Weiss, the spoiled rich heiress. Now, more tension is caused again when, while visiting the harbor, they come upon a crime scene. Another dust robbery, from which the police suspect the White Fang, a faunus terrorist group. Soon after, Sun, a monkey faunus, stows away aboard a ship in order to arrive at Vale early, and causes Weiss to explain her less than politically correct views on the faunus, which enrages Blake. There's also this random girl named Penny that RWBY makes friends with. Anyways, Weiss and Blake argue for a bit, and Weiss talks about how the White Fang has been targeting her family. Blake accidentally reveals that she is a former member of the White Fang and also a faunus. She runs away and joins Sun for tea, explaining the history of the organization, how terrorism was never their goal, and how she left when things got a little too violent. She explains that it wouldn't make sense for the White Fang to be behind the dust robberies, and Sun suggests that they investigate a massive shipment of dust coming in that evening to see if they're really the culprits or not. While this occurs, Weiss, Yang, RWBY, and soon Penny are all searching for Blake. Blake and Sun stake out the docks, only to find that the White Fang was behind the robberies. As they move in to steal the dust shipment, Blake notices that they are being led by a human, specifically Roman Torchwick, who is a criminal that RWBY encountered in the first episode of the series. Blake attacks Roman, questioning why the White Fang would work for a human, Doesn't go too well for her, alerting Ruby and Penny. Blake and Sun battle Roman and his goons, but start losing just when Ruby and Penny show up. Ruby is instantly shot down, but Penny starts going off on the White Fang, pretty much taking out everyone except for Tortrick, who gets away. The day is saved, Blake and Weiss sort of resolve their conflict, Team RWBY is back together, and some foreshadowing is dropped for Penny's true purpose. The end. Volume over. So, did you spot the issues here? Alright, let's start from the beginning. First of all, this finale is a tiny bit anticlimactic. It's only 2 incredibly short episodes long, and its final battle only really involves one of the 4 main characters and not even the title character of the show. I will say that I like the docks as a setting and Roman as the final antagonist of the season. He's a relatively small-time villain, and for the first major climax of the show it fits well. However, this feels like it should just be the end of a short Blake mini arc, not an entire season, and I really think that this just embodies the main issue of the entire finale. It doesn't wrap up the ongoing arc of the season, just the arc of Blake and Weiss that was set up only the episode prior. The entire first half of Volume 1 was dedicated to the formation of Team RWBY, and one would think that the second half should be dedicated to them learning to work together as a team. But it's not. Instead, we get 2 episodes focused on just Weiss and RWBY, 4 entire episodes focused on Jean, and then the last 2 episodes focused on Weiss and Blake. While you could call this more of a flaw with Volume 1 as a whole, I think it hurts the finale the most. I'm perfectly fine with the conflict and the setting of this finale, but the final battle should have absolutely been Team RWBY coming together to fight Roman. Which leads into my next point. Ruby Rose, the main character of the series, does quite literally nothing in this finale. Seriously, she takes a back seat to everything. Sun fights Roman with Blake, and Ruby gets shot down so Penny can have her moment. If you showed me these 2 episodes out of context, then told me that Ruby was the main protagonist, I don't think I'd believe you. It's especially weird when the first episode leads you to believe that Ruby and Roman are going to get a proper rematch by the end of the season. But that doesn't even happen till Volume 3. So far, this finale has failed 3 of the 4 criteria I laid out. But what about the last one? By far, the biggest upside to this finale is the action. I skimmed over it in my recap, but good lord, the action is phenomenal. Monty Ohm's choreography is nothing short of absolutely masterful, and backed up by Jeff Williams' score, Blake, Sun, and Penny vs. Roman is an incredible fight. If you are watching this video and for some reason haven't watched RWBY, please at least go watch this fight. It might actually be a little bit better out of context. This is actually a common trend for many RWBY finales. Oftentimes the battles will be awesome, but won't have the writing to back them up. In some cases, it's the other way around. This phenomenon is possibly most apparent in Volume 1. So, in conclusion, Volume 1's finale is fine. It's got some awesome action, and I think it would have worked well as maybe the middle of a season, just not the end of one. I think this can be attributed mostly to the fact that RWBY was initially a miniseries about Team RWBY forming in the Emerald Forest, which also explains why its first half was so much better than its second half. However, despite all the criticism I just chucked at the Volume 1 finale, I still like it. It's still fun, enjoyable, and even a little nostalgic. Whenever the credits start rolling and Wings by Jeff Williams starts to play, I get a little sad, and I remember my first time watching the show. So, heading over to the tier list, I'm tossing the Volume 1 finale in C tier. Fun, but lacking in many areas. That'll be the end of my first ever YouTube video and my first video on RWBY finales. Up next is Volume 2, coming whenever I have the motivation to work on it. And if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy.
Seem to fill